And ultimately, I Am Circles started out as a mantra, and I found that there were so many people resonating with that, being circles in a world that keeps teaching us to be square, and actually difference our uniqueness and being united in our uniqueness. Difference is the way.
Would you like some high-grade Guatemalan coffee?
Our fave. I would love some. You always pour yourself first.
I think the camera's got evidence there that I went for you. Here it goes.
Thank you, babe.
The couple's retreat.
That's why I brought the love mug. Nothing here but love.
Okay, nice. What have I brought? I brought your mug.
Your favourite.
Thanks, Lucy Christian. So we've got some lovely coffee, and we've got the roaring ocean behind us. If you are listening, then you might be able to pick that up. It'll probably be quite dulcet and calm on the audio, but for us it's quite loud. And we've got the North Sea as the backdrop,
landscape,
the land drop, where the land drops. And we've had a good morning. Are you feeling good?
Yeah, I feel great. Feel really good.
What have we done this morning?
Did some yoga.
Woke up, did some yoga, got some movement in.
A beautiful run, and then we went in the sea, and it was the hottest. It's the hottest day of the year, I would say.
In the sea, yeah.
Yeah, the hottest day of the year
So
out of the sea, definitely.
Maybe. Remember that day? There was like about 2 months ago. There was one day it was just scorching.
Around Easter.
Anyway, talking about the weather.
I know, we do.
Good start to a podcast.
It is glorious.
It's hot. I don't know. Debated it was hotter yesterday. Fine, mighty, dandy, England. So no, there is not a cloud in the sky though, and it's a beautiful, gorgeous day. Cheers.
Cheers, babe. Thanks for making this happen.
Yeah. Well, equally, you've made this happen at the same time.
It's a 22nd
Yeah,
episode.
so the reason we've a kind of an impetus to get this done today, because of course, I've always wanted to host you on the podcast, because when I look around at friends and other people and people, call them influencers or whatever, the people who I want on the podcast are the people who inspire me, and that is definitely yourself, more than anyone. But the impetus for today was the 22nd episode, and it's the 22nd of April, and we will be finishing at 2:22. Yeah, feels good, all aligned.
We should probably mention it's a synchronized number, numerology, for anyone out there.
Why is that?
Well, it was my lucky number, and then we met, and it was your lucky number.
Consciously so.
Yeah.
I remember as a child walking the streets to school and back, and just pondering to myself, like, my number, what is my number? And 22 just fell in to feel right, and I've carried that. It's always, I was born on the 22nd, but I kind of put that aside, and I was like, no, I'm not going to let that, deem it valuable for me. There was so many other reasons, and I had them all like close to my heart, and I carried the number for so long. And then it was quite funny when I found out it was your lucky number. Yeah,
and just would appear, always, all the time, in the funniest situations. 22 would appear. I collected playing cards, as you know, while we were travelling. I would see, I don't know why there was cards upside down on the ground, but
you taught me that if there's a card with the face up, then just leave it alone. Well, put it in the bin if let it pick in. But the other, if it's face down, you have to pick it up and you have to keep it.
Well, if it's your card.
Well, yeah, and it was often number 2.
No, yours was 5. Do you not remember? You were collecting 5s.
God, yes, it was.
And that's my birthday. And I collected 2s.
So I had a fear of the number 5. I did. When I used to play on the PlayStation as a kid, if ever a 5th goal went in, I'd have to score an own goal or get another one, because it would just freak me out. It was very, very, very strange. But yeah, I did collect number 5s. I felt like that travelling and finding 5s was like the facing the fear and it coming back full circle. So why was 22 your lucky number?
2 was one of my first words, number 2. And it just stuck with me. And then it was like, what's more powerful than number 2? It would be 2 2s. So it just was like a kid's thing, you know, when you're young. And so 22 or 2 2s was really quite, you know, seeing 2 2s often. And then as I grew up and tuned in more, 22 appeared everywhere. And it appeared when we met. It appeared in other people that I'd met while travelling. Their birthdays landed on the 22nd. Some of my closest people are 22 birthdays as well. The route that I used to cycle when I first went freelance in London was Route 22. The date that was up in an event space where I was facilitating never changed from 22nd of October. And so these just little things. So anyone that's into numerology, you'll know what we're talking about. But that's why we're here today.
Yeah, I feel it's more of a feeling. It has been for me. It's something when a feeling lands, a number lands, and you're like, oh, that feels so right. Like, and then of course you project things out into the world, and what you're feeling inside, you'll see more of. And there's a bit of that for sure.
Yes.
But also, there's nothing, you know, that's great. Why not? I remember I was collecting 22s in an album on my phone. And it just drew you into situations, and then you'd generally make more from that. So you'd make the most out of that situation because 22 was there, or there was a reason, and it just brought so much meaning.
Well, I've changed the course of my day based on seeing the number 22. Like in the corner of my eye, I would follow the road because I saw a massive big 22 on the and it was it led me to some places and people. And of course 22, you know, people see 11 and it's like, you know, it means you're aligned when you see that time or in the situation that you're in. And when, you know, seeing 22, and for me, I love it now because my dad knows it, you know, friends know it, when I get a screenshot of 22, and it just makes me feel so lovely. So it's nice. It's
and
just nice.
You put that as your background, so you screenshot, and then have that as your background for your phone.
No.
You've definitely done that.
No, I haven't.
Oh, yeah, so here we are. So, so Nina, I'd love to delve into all things you. And, paint the... I mean, there no doubt will be the majority of people who listen to the podcast who won't know much about yourself. And I wouldn't say we post things about each other that often on social media. So that's not really a thing. So this is going to be a treat, I think, for a lot of listeners. You know, they might have been getting to know me through the podcast, but then who is my other whole? Who is the other whole of me?
200%. 100 and 100.
I was thinking about that last night, the other half, and I was like, it's okay. We don't have to say the other. It's fine to say the other half. We get what you mean, and I know you don't mean you're just half a person, and they complete you. But one thing, actually, to go back to, and this podcast, it's not going to be about how we first met, because that's a series. That's a series in itself. I would love it to be about who you are and how you've come to sit on this rock today, you know, and but yeah, when we did met, I remember thinking, God, she's the one. When you said the phrase, you kind of finished my sandwich sentence, and you said the Friends quote, "You complete me." I said, you complete me. And we were like, I don't know, doing something. You go, I said, you complete me. And then you said, kitchen, matey. Because it's off a Friends episode. And I was like, God, she's the one.
Really? You've never told me that
before.
Not?
There you go. Exclusives
Cheers
on the
to
podcast.
That. but we don't. The completion thing. It's an interesting one, isn't it?
That was going to be the wedding speech.
Oh, babe, if we get married.
Sorry, no, right.
It's been a lot of years, guys.
So yeah. But I remember that, and it's feeding into that. Well, you complete me. Well, you don't. You're already complete.
But this has been the journey to more completion within self. So we've both been on that journey, and that's why I think it's non-conventional. So we've very much been together and apart in this journey, and it has been over the period of meeting each other on that path and really connecting and falling in love whilst also trying to fall in love with ourselves. And that requires space and energy and focus. And so we have had periods of time apart.
Yes, we have, for sure.
Yeah. And I think that is quite significant to, and a testimony to who we are as people, what we stand for, and the complete negotiation that we're having individually, like that inner negotiation of who we are, what we're doing, creating space for ourselves, creating space for the relationship, and we are in that negotiation, and that has been a constant since we met.
Yeah, our journeys have very much mirrored each other's. Wherever I've been at, you've been somewhere or are somewhere very similar. And whether that's places in the world or internally as well. Yeah,
inward and outward adventures.
That's what it'll be called, the series.
Yeah, could be.
So, yeah, back to you. And who is this curious soul seeker, free thinker, ladybird, dot connector? I'm just reading your card.
No.
You've got all these kind of labels in a pyramid form of like, what do they say? It's ladybird, curious.
It's not. There's a couple of different ones. It's basically a joke around all these different titles and labels that we give ourselves, and it's like, navigator, facilitator, creator, content
creator.
Not content creator. And it is essentially a bit of a joke around the journey that we go on, or that we can be focused on, a kind of like, who are we and what do we do and how do we give that a name? But really, in our essence, we are multiple things, and then we kind of have to put that into a ball that we can throw at people and say, hey, you want to work with me? Cool. Hey, you want to work together? You want to collaborate? And it's kind of like, these are the things that I do, and this is what I stand for, and this is who I am. But to get there, you kind of have to go through all of the different, labels.
Yeah, I think it's one of the most powerful things you can bring awareness to, that you're not your job title and you're not a name you give yourself. It sounds so obvious.
Yeah.
But when you contemplate and sit on it and think, okay, well then who am I?
Yeah.
And it really opens up lots of doors, and then, go run, child, and explore. Be curious about the world. Because we're not the labels, and we are not these job titles that sometimes we get caught up in the identity of.
Yeah, or the role, mother, partner, and the jobs, and what those hats are that you wear, and the jacket that you wear, and that's the mask, and that is the identity. And I think it's the journey to where I am now, and the things that I do now was completely shedding those clothes, those hats, those naked, vulnerable, beyond the identity and what you feel you should be doing, and a complete inquiry into where that all stems from. Where do we build our identity? Where do we choose what path to take? Who guided us there?
Yeah.
What system guided us there? What, there's so many different factors.
Yeah.
And then being able to challenge that, but feeling safe to do so, because of course I believe that those the first moments where you start to inquire and become curious about the journey inward and self and work, because these things come parallel, because we have to work in this world. It can be really it's very uncomfortable to begin with, and challenging and scary and vulnerable. And we live in a society where we perceive and believe that we need certain experience, or that we have to have experience in order to go after something that we may be passionate about. And we have we have this path that's carved out, that we think's carved out in front of us, and we have this perception of where we're going, or where we should go. And then if something changes that course, and we want to go in a new direction and pursue something deeper, that can feel so overwhelming, because it's the unknown. It's the complete and utter unknown path. And that's the part that I think, when you're called to the unknown path, that's the magic, but that's the mystic, and it can make people feel all sorts of different feelings: anxious, depressed, scared, vulnerable, disempowered, but then obviously empowered. And that's what help people do now.
I think it's a relationship also with that unknown, and being within harmony, at harmony with that, because without something to call myself, who am I? And it's like, or then I feel lost or vulnerable because I'm exposed, and I can't identify with anything. When that relationship, taking it back to yourself, the relationship with the uncertainty, with the ever changing, with the world that's gone through so many different things, different seasons, different kind of the Anthropocene, like so many different climate shifts in the globe. Like a relationship with something that is so beyond yourself, like being in harmony with that, is actually what you can draw it back to.
I see it as we are living in a world essentially of a lot of control in our lives, and planning, a lot of kind
it's
of
quite rigid
mapping, and we think we know what it is to move in a direction of so-called happiness, and what we have these perceptions and ideas. And really, in order to move in a direction of deep connection, contentment, happiness, joy, spirit, essence, like who you really are, all those things takes a completely different path. It has to take a completely different path. And that just shows you a fundamental picture of perception and idea and thoughts, and what we're, the stories that we're told are true about life. And then the unknown, which is really like it's an open landscape of exploration, and that's what self-discovery is. It's moving away from that to this. But what you're saying about unknown, it's the relationship, and I've been thinking about this a lot lately, the relationship of life and death. And today is 1 month after my darling granny passed away, as you know, and on the 22nd of March, so again, 22, such a symbolic number. And Granny was a person who truly saw the essence of Nina and all of her grandkids and all the people that she met. She saw your essence.
Yeah, it's interesting how grandparents can do that quite really well.
Yeah. And as an elder and as a woman, And she was something of, she for me was it was like seeing the true Nina all the time, always helping me to guide through those discomforts and challenges. And we were able to hold her in her passage of death, be with her through that process, be by her bedside, surround her and serenade her in love, and I was so proud of my family. And that brought this unbelievable truth to the surface of like, this is life. Life is life and death, and they are one in the same. There is nothing more known in our lives than death itself. That is the one complete truth. And yet there is this mystical, magical unknown about it. And that is the relationship with the unknown. We don't know anything else that's going to be filled in our lives. We don't know what we're going to choose to fill that life with. But we do know one day we will die. And we have a funny relationship with that.
Well, we're aware of it, aren't we?
Yeah. But it's almost like we fight against that awareness because we want to sometimes.
Well, I think it's a wrestle between the primal side of us that has these desires that pull us in these directions.
Yeah.
Sex, food, real primal instincts.
Pleasure,
yeah. Comfort, tribal essence, a survival, primal sense of survival. What I need to do today to survive, and that is, all of the above. Being accepted, and just conforming. Conforming is a mode of survival.
Totally.
It's so primal within us, and we talked about it last night. Like, we have so much guiding us that we're still so unaware of, even that we can kind of even bring our consciousness to. It's just undeniable. But to come back to what you're saying, it's that wrestle between this primal aspect of ourselves, but yet the awareness of this kind of higher state of being, of consciousness. So we're so aware of that, so that there's almost like a wrestle between those primal instincts, but then there's this awareness that we can do good, we can be intentional with our actions, we can think, which is a blessing and a curse. And it's a wrestle between those things, which is where the kind of the unhelpfulness comes from in terms of death. Because it's like, well, yes, we're aware of it, we know it's going to happen, but we cannot fathom not being here.
Well, we could maybe...
Can you?
Well, yeah, that's bizarre, isn't it?
You can't. There's no way, because you have no experience of it. We can only relate from experience or, this amazing awareness that we have. But it's you can't contemplate never existing again. And what that really means, it's almost like you cannot feel into that. So it's not like... It's a very challenging conversation because there's so many kind of unknowns about it,
which is the point,
Yeah.
And I think that's the relationship that we struggle with because of our attachments and desires, as you were saying, and the survival. It's such an interesting way of looking at it, because if we're in survival mode and we want to survive day by day on simple form, and we look at the things that we need to survive, and those things that we need to survive, if you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, on the basic level, food, shelter, water, and then as you go up, those things evolve, and we need things, like psychological safety and we need connection, and we need some form of esteem, like a self-esteem, self-awareness. And then, of course, you move up towards self-actualization, where you're in flow with yourself and your purpose, or whatever purpose means. I mean, these things are kind of conceptual terms, but for some people, you know, that are on that journey towards, you know, self-actualizing, when you have to shift from survival mode. You have to move through the pyramid. If you see it as a pyramid, you might not. I don't. I see it as a circle. Obviously, I see it as kind of like this more cyclical process where we are constantly going through these kind of circular cycles and circles in motion, and shifting between the known and the unknown, and shifting between life and death, beginnings and endings, these cycles, like closing and openings, parts of the self, part of the identity, things that we have to let go, control and surrender. And they are one in the same, just like, you know, just like back to, you know, some of the words that I said at Granny's funeral. You know, when we're born, we inhale. And when we die, the first thing we do is we inhale. And when we die, the last thing that we do is exhale. And the breath is life, and the breath is one in the same cycle. And the part in between, you know, the space in between, like the wholeness, you know, imagine that sort of cycle, the inhale and the exhale. And that bit in between is what we choose. We actually get to choose how we fill that space.
Yeah, and on that, it's cyclical because it's not really a pyramid. It will become full circle because, as it so happens, when you reach old age, it's the experience is quite similar to that of a child.
It is.
And we need to be aware of that, because that is coming back full circle to our primal survival. We need, you know, you might die suddenly, but if you become ill, then you will go, you know, self-actualization will not be a thing. You will want food and water, and you want
basics,
your breath back.
Or you know, in those last moments with Granny, she was as vulnerable and as fragile as a child, and needed to be taken care of. And it was in those moments that she had to herself surrender to be in our care as such a woman who was caring for her family her whole life. And that was a massive lesson in that process as well, that realization.
I think one of the things at a funeral that's really stuck with me, and I don't want to shake it almost, because it's a real perspective shifter, but it's so obvious and we know it, so this won't be news to anyone. But when we die, and when people talk about our legacy and at our funeral, they will be talking about our essence. That's a word. It's our essence, what we stood for, what our values were, what we did with those values, how we conducted ourselves, how we related with people. And that essence of yourself is the only thing people will remember. They won't remember your possessions. They won't remember how much money you had in the bank, or how many employees you had.
Yeah,
that's not a thing. They will remember your essence and how you spoke to people and how you wanted to be spoken to.
Absolutely. And I think on that, you know, fundamentally, I believe the path of self-inquiry, self-discovery, self-leadership, whatever you want to call it, that path is to embody the essence of your truest nature, to fill yourself inside with that essence, to live from it. And in order to do that, it is about strengthening the relationship with that knowing of what the essence is, but the discovery of that essence. And that, for me, is that kind of core, is the core, you know, of the.
So what is the true self? Because it's one thing that I grasp with, I battle with, grapple with.
I was going to say.
That's the one. You can say. You can finish my sentences. So one thing I'll be grappling with, 'cause it's like, how do I really know? It's like, call it intuition. What's coming from that place of trueness, like your true self. So what for you is your true self, and how do we form a better relationship with it?
Well, like we were talking earlier about the 22, okay? So I just think there is a internal, let's call it a map.
Compass, I was going to say.
Compass? Right, okay. Good one. Let's go with the compass. And there is an internal compass and an infinite map. And energetically, we can feel, but this is also about building a relationship with feeling. And this is something that we are also slightly removed from, is feeling within ourselves. Because if we're disconnected from feeling, it means that we have built a relationship with control, with avoidance, with distraction. And if we've built a relationship with those things, then we are disconnected from feeling. Because for some people, and for me, in part of my journey, feeling was scary, was too much, was overwhelming, was and we get afraid to go there. And so the first part of the finding the inner compass is to feel. And it is often to feel the uncomfortable relationship that we have with ourselves. And that first step, to feel some of the uncomfortable, maybe sad, maybe pain, maybe shame, guilt, blame, all those different uncomfortable emotions, to feel them. That's the first step, to feel the inner compass and to navigate the infinite terrain towards truth. Because the truth might be that we're carrying something uncomfortable, and the first place to look with that compass is there. But at the same time, is to find the knowing and the belief that through the discomfort becomes comfort, becomes joy, acceptance, right? Exactly. Acceptance, awareness, healing, overcoming.
Empowering.
Empowering, absolutely. And that inner compass, that resonance, so, building a relationship of honesty, on a true relationship with yourself, like looking yourself in the eyes, in the mirror, and saying to yourself, do I know you? Do I love you? Do I care about you?
Yeah, and if you can't be honest with that, then
Start.
There's some work to do, right? Because that surely is your base point of being honest. That do I like myself? Do I like what I see? Do I? And
like,
it's purely not physical. It's completely like, can I say that? Can I say, do I like myself? And if that makes me feel uncomfortable, okay, then why?
Then why? Totally. And what, one of the biggest questions that I began to ask was, why am I the way I am? Or, because again, it's been a process of shedding and letting go and changing completely, why was I the way I was? So, in the present moment, why am I the way I am? And that's the curiosity piece. The piece that says, not why me, but why? Just why? Just, not from that place of victim or stuckness. Because we all can feel those feelings of being stuck.
Yeah, well, that's
or
where
lost.
it becomes kind of squirrely, because because it's like, well, yeah, I feel uncomfortable because of this, or because of that, or because of them, or because of him, because of her. And then it gets kind of, kind of uneven ground where you're like, how do I reach a point of knowing that truth when the concentration is on what's going on outside, what's going on out there, what's going on around, and that's your main focus. When, for me, and jump in here if you feel like I'm going off on a different wavelength, but for me it's why is that situation, why is this person made me feel this way? Are they speaking truth about me, or are they not? And if they're not, then can I have confidence in me and what I believe in? If not, and there is some truth there, then have I the awareness to accept that and change that, but be honest and true with that. And so my truth self, that wasn't in alignment with, so I want to get back to my true self. So it's all about that feeling of what makes you uncomfortable, essentially, in your own person.
Well, fundamentally, which is why these things are a practice. It's like the inner true self is non-fluctuating. It's non-wavering. It just is.
Okay, so now we're getting to the core.
To the essence, and that's the essence. It's essentially.
So what is it then? I really want to grasp it.
Well,
because it's hard for people. Like, they have this conversation around, well, what's my intuition telling me over my desires, my primal instincts telling me to, do this, do that. It's that,
sure.
Or what is the difference?
Well, fundamentally, I think we also have to establish a relationship with our ego.
Sure.
And we have to know what our ego's trying to keep us safe from, why our ego's there, what it's trying to control, and what it's trying to protect us from. And ultimately, when we establish the relationship with the ego, that is when we know, when we are conducting our day-to-day, whether we're in alignment with our integrity of our true self and our essence. But there's something that I will come back to on that, because there's a more kind of existential version of the self, obviously, and then there is here in this physical form how we live our lives day to day, from that essence. But first of all, we have to establish the relationship with the ego, and that is so challenging to begin with, because it's so confronting. And even just understanding why that ego is there, and that it might be driving some of our behavior, some of our thoughts, our intentions, the ways in which we want to take action, how we perceive life comes through the lens of the ego. But once you start to work with that and do the work around the ego, then you can see when the actions and the choices that you're making, the conversations that you're having, that's when you can see where that's coming from. And it is really about creating an internal dialogue with that, negotiating with that, the duality. We're always in this flux, this dance with that. And the more that you move in the direction of truth-seeking and self-inquiry, the more you move in that direction, the negotiations change and the dance changes. One of the dances might be between, what your parents wanted of you, your career, your life choices, and then what you actually want. That's one dance. It's like, okay, well, I'm going to negotiate this, and it feels like, there might be tension there, or it's hard to pull away and detach and carve your own path, your own choices. And then another thing is the duality within ourselves of, hey, I'm living in this materialistic world and I want certain things, but hey, I'm also trying to practice, being disconnected and detached and non-materialistic, and it's kind of like, who am I in that as well, when you start walking down a more spiritual path, and you're shifting your sort of anyway. And then so that journey with the true self is a constant negotiation, but the relationship with the ego is the first, I would say, one of the first, but it's not always that obvious, and often people are coming into the recognition of the ego through a bit of a crisis, an existential crisis, or a midlife crisis, or a quarter life crisis, or a mental health struggle, or a burnout at work.
Yeah. Well, we often don't change things until we have to.
Or or an illness or a death or something that happens that catapults life and the identity as we know it, and kind of cracks us open. And that is what we're talking about, this week, about the call. You are either answering the call of the soul, of the essence of who you are. You're either answering it then, when this thing happens in your life that shakes you, changes something, you either answer it or you don't.
Yeah.
And you let that thing define you, and you let that thing kind of rule, the sort of lifeline that you have. And that is when you answer the call, and it comes from within. So
Carl Jungian philosophy called this the daemon, which is you could call it your essence, but it's your subconscious talking to you.
Yep. Okay.
And you called yours Desmond.
No, that was
right?
Desmond was the demons.
Well, it can show up.
Sure.
I guess that was more your shadow, I guess.
Yes.
But
Desmond was because autocorrect changed demons in my phone to Desmond, and then I thought that's quite nice. I'm gonna
trying to talk to you.
Befriend my Desmond.
Means.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So Carl Jung talked about this notion of the daemon, and that it is your subconscious always guiding you, and whether you listen to it or not is your own path. If you don't, things tend to get worse. But there is always, we called it as children. It was like, my nan would say, what does your heart want?
Yeah.
Or something similar. And it's this thing that you really know is, or you're afraid to act from, but you kind of have this knowing, this intuition. And it is this thing that's trying to guide you all the time, but because of these surface level that we've talked about, of these surface level mind chatter, because of that, we are so out of touch and out of tune with it.
Totally. Yeah, but it's absolutely, and so it genuinely only happens when you have a call within to look within. That is the only time that people can overcome, and I'm going to say it in a broad sense, but the addiction to life of on that level, the addictions or the self-sabotage or the bad habits or the repetitive behavior that's causing us disconnection.
Repetitive behavior that you don't really want. Yeah,
sure. And that comes in so many different forms. And, and it comes it comes in all levels of life, and it's worldwide. It's not, it is a worldwide thing. So this doesn't discriminate, doesn't matter how wealthy you are, doesn't matter where you were born. It's I've met people around the world during travels from all different countries who have answered the call within, come back to the same essence. They're coming back to the same place within, and they're facing parts of themselves and their society structures and the things that they've been told and taught. It's the same questions, facing and negotiating the same battles within. And we are here fundamentally to collectively journey with that. We are, ultimately.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, that's what I was talking about earlier. The essence, that essence is universal, and it is, what can be packaged up as collective consciousness, or, it's something beyond this body, beyond the ethnicities that we're born into, beyond the skin color, beyond the sexual orientation, beyond those things, the labels, is something so much deeper and beyond that we can all relate to, should we go there, should we take that call, should we sit in that space.
Mm-hmm.
And when we come into connection with that, it assists us in the day-to-day living of our lives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's why I think the archetypes are so powerful, because it's this archetype that everyone can on some level relate to.
Mm-hmm.
It's all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
Every human
Mm-hmm.
can experience the king, the queen, or the kingdom, and your environment.
Yeah, the home within.
The
home within.
Yeah.
Totally, exactly. And when you meet people also on this path, the resonance is like you hear one another and you get it. It's like a universal nod. There's no language. It's just like, yeah, I see you. I feel you. And yeah.
So what are some of the ways that, or practices, because I always bring it back to the body-mind connection,
Mm-hmm.
whether that's, and they are one thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's not two separate things. We have to keep reminding ourselves that. And I just want to stop for a second and acknowledge these two trying to find a way down the rocks, and I'd like to see them scramble their way down, but I don't think it's going to happen.
No.
They're going to go, choose the path. Oh, I love it. So, as I was saying, what was I saying?
Don't ask me to bring us back somewhere.
It's kind of immediately, like, as I was saying, gives you more time to think. So
we were talking about the body-mind.
Yeah, the body-mind connection, and it's one thing. So bring a bit of stillness and a bit of silence, because that is conducive with the natural world. And there will be noise and there will be chaos, but then there will be order. And we need to develop that, that relation between the two, an understanding of what it is. So bringing stillness to the mind can really then only tune in to what the body is telling you, and not distracting. And that's why I feel we've got ourselves into such a mess, because of these distractions and this noise and this never-ending perpetual progress, which just isn't sustainable. But to tune it back into the question, the body, mind, how does this come up in your daily life? What practices do you tune into to bring about this connection to your true self? Are there any practices?
Yeah, I mean,
I know.
As you mentioned, stillness. For me, that comes in practicing silence. And that was very, very, very hard for me a few years ago. And I think it's hard for a lot of people. People think I'm crazy when I tell them that I have done, a day's silence on my own at home, turn all technology off. And they kind of go, oh, I couldn't do that, couldn't be silent, couldn't be out on my phone all day. Fundamentally, it's been a process. So, but it has been one of the most liberating processes, because in that stillness and in that silence, tuning in to an internal energy and the creativity that we all have within us, and the relationship that we have with ourselves. And obviously sometimes in the stillness and the silence there is a discomfort, there is parts of ourselves that we have to face. And so that has been a sort of one practice that I've developed comfort in. It's gone from uncomfortable into comfortable over the years. Journaling is a massive one, and a lot of work that I do when I'm working one-to-one with people is to establish that dialogue with oneself through journaling, through writing, through recognizing those thought patterns, the words that we're saying to ourselves. And I've been journaling since I was a kid, and my diary used to have a name when I was a kid.
That's normal.
Yeah, I think it is. Absolutely. But
mine was called Diary.
Oh.
I'm joking. Dear Diary.
Oh, right. You didn't keep a diary when you were a kid.
I did. 6 pages. I've still got them.
Amazing. Well, I think I definitely think the reason that I started writing was because we had to do it at school, and then I just kept it up. And I loved having that space that was intimate and private for me to write down my thoughts and feelings. And fundamentally, I was an extremely sensitive, intuitive, curious kid, but that didn't feel like the norm. Sensitivity didn't feel like the norm. Being sensitive didn't. Felt like it was a weakness. So having a space and a place that felt safe to write down everything that you were experiencing was amazing. And I think it's still so powerful. Journaling, obviously meditating is...
just on that, how can someone journal? How can someone
if
go about journaling?
Starting?
If they just look at a page and they just... that nothing's coming out, how can someone develop it?
Start by writing that. I feel awkward writing. I feel exactly what you feel. This is the relationship with feeling that we have to connect to. Feeling is the piece that we have to feel. If it's feeling awkward, write that it's feeling awkward. Start with exactly what's coming up, exactly what's coming through, and just put that down, because it's in that. If I'm feeling really weird,
the obstacle is the way.
Well, yeah, I'm feeling weird writing this down, or the other thing that I think is a brilliant hack to get anybody out of a state or into present moment is to use the senses and to talk through each of the senses. You can use your hand. What can I feel, touch? You can do it in the physical sense or the metaphysical sense. What can I smell? What can I taste? What can I hear? And what can I smell? Did I say smell?
You said smell.
What's the fifth one?
See.
What can I see? Absolutely. What can I see? And talking through those senses, it's such a powerful hack. And even if you don't have a journal, just taking 5 minutes to go through those 5 senses in any moment when we're stuck remunerating on the past or overwhelmed thinking about the future, that is also a brilliant way to come back into the present moment of what is. And essentially that's, again, establishing a relationship with feeling.
Yeah. And developing, and as I said, working on that.
So that's
bring it into your conscience. And
that is and was a method and practice that I used, and every time that I've used it, I can very clearly remember where I was in the different moments, because you are brought back straight into the present moment. And so because of that, I can totally reconnect back to that memory in that moment. And that is fundamentally what I also believe in, is that when we're strengthening that relationship with our truth and our essence and the present moment, we're tuning in and we're remembering.
Yeah, we are remembering. You are... Damn it, forgot the word I was going to use. We are practicing... No, we're developing. I've said that too much. What was the word I was going to use? Damn. We are strengthening that muscle. That's what I was going to say. It's not that profound. Strengthening that muscle.
Yeah.
We're strengthening that muscle, just like when I get in the sea. I'm strengthening the muscle that makes me just tune right into my body and feel it in every cell. I'm strengthening that muscle to know what that feels like, to know how my body feels and how my body reacts to things, rather than sometimes being numb when I'm sat at the computer and I'm not feeling anything but kind of what I'm thinking about. So we're always strengthening these muscles, and if we use it, it's gonna
absolutely. And that's the practice part. You know, it is a practice, and it takes time, and it takes patience, and it takes process, and that is again back to the circle, the cyclical nature of things, and there is no destination or end. All it is strengthening. It is a practice.
Growing, you could say.
Absolutely, growth. And fundamentally, you know, it can feel at times, you know, hard work. A lot. It is working out. It's working out the spirit. It's working out the mind. Reconditioning the mind, reprogramming the mind. Strengthening the relationship to the intuition, strengthening the relationship to the heart, and then being and living more from that place.
Yes.
So that's, you know, that's what the practice piece is.
Yeah.
And so any practices and tools that are going to help move towards that are you know, are the things to embed into the lifestyle.
Yeah, and what's coming for me is the essence of non-reaction, because if we're constantly reacting to stimulus or to certain things, you're not giving yourself a chance to process or come from, okay, how does this feel, and then I'll respond with something which is coming from my truth, rather than just a reaction based on, you know, where my head's at or how I'm feeling today. Or
it's also obviously building the relationship with what is, and I think that also comes with acceptance. And so non-reacting to things, yes, because again it's around developing a relationship with having more conscious choices. So and again, more relationship with being able to recognize, you know, if we are reacting to a stimulus or a distraction, why? Don't judge yourself for it. Don't beat yourself up for it. Just recognize, why have I done that? Why in that uncomfortable, after that uncomfortable, you know, conflict or argument, have I gone straight to my phone and try to distract myself? Or can I create a bit of space and sit in the discomfort and come back to myself?
What are my crutches?
Absolutely. I mean, you know, we would not be human if anybody could, you know, like perfect on paper. There's just no such thing of, like, you know, no human having a relationship.
I'm not sure why it's a word. It probably isn't in a lot of cultures.
What?
Perfect. Like, why is it a word if it's not actually true? Yeah. It's quite interesting. In our culture, it's a word. Oh, that's perfect. Well, not in my mind, and I don't think that's the truth.
Well, I think it's more so, it shows a...
we can strive for something.
Yeah.
But it's all subjective, really, isn't it?
Of course, things are subjective, and ultimately we have an idea of what would make something or ourselves perfect, based on the stimulus and the perception that we have of what that is. And so because of that, and it's often, it's often something that, seeking and craving from within to be a certain way or look a certain way. A massive part of my own journey, and so many, a lot of women, is an image orientated issue. Body image. The way that you look, at what it is to be beautiful, what it is to be, what it is to be attractive, sexy, feminine.
How have you grappled with this?
How have I grappled with it?
And how have you, worked with it and
Well, for some of you who don't know me, my career started out on a path of working in the fashion industry. For me, image was so part of how I cared a lot about how I looked, but not in a kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Finish my sentence, babe.
crippling. It never crippled you. It never held you back.
Didn't hold me back. I was always very into fashion. As a kid, I was very into styling and dressing myself. Mum and Dad let me dress myself. It was a very playful, fun thing to do. I was very into fashion. And so, through school, when I was able to wear, non-uniform or express myself, I would express myself through fashion.
Yeah, but that didn't stop you caring so much about what people thought or how you looked.
Sure.
Like some people, it can lock them in a room, but other people, they just sometimes it's the counter that they care so much that they end up feeling and showing. Oh, I don't care.
Yeah.
I'm out there. I'm loud. I'm proud. When really inside, it's quite the opposite.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So for me, from a very young age 9, I had child acne, and that made me extremely aware of this this awful looking, in my eyes, this not very nice looking skin that I was in. And that's how and I was so young, you're so young. And so from that young age, developed a perception, a very heightened awareness of how I used to stand in a circle of friends.
Yeah, lighting,
is the light shining on my face? As I got a little bit more older, wearing thick makeup at school so that you couldn't see, the spots, and ultimately, that established quite a heightened inner dialogue, subconscious relationship with image, with the way that I looked, and in order to mask that, I developed a very light-hearted, confident, external personality. Well, of course, personality is another thing, but I was really like, I'm going to mask the fact that I'm feeling insecure about my skin by being super loud and
coping mechanisms.
Absolutely, that was a total coping mechanism. And what that also ends up doing is it's the mask that we wear on the outside, and it's very different to what's going on the inside. And we develop that over time. And so, so many other, parts of life, we develop these coping mechanisms. And as we grow up, we are more fixated on the external and on the perception rather than what's going on the inside. So we develop a relationship with external confidence, the way that we are perceived, but actually what is going on the inside is very, very different. So that was the first time when I came into contact with what image was, and I mean the fashion side of things as well. That was, I was really kind of a bit obsessed with what I was wearing all the time.
So how did you overcome this? Obviously, 'cause it's not present now.
No.
So
I mean, I love this is the thing, I feel it's not the same now because, I've developed a really true, fun, playful relationship with my, with clothes that I wear. And for me, it's another part of how you express your true self.
Mhm.
But I don't look at, what's on in the shops and what's on, what's
Magazines.
in magazines,
Yeah,
what's
what's
in
new
trend,
now, what's popular.
new. Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. It's like what comes from within. It's intuitive.
Because that also can be how you're feeling is a response to the things you're being exposed to, billboards,
Absolutely.
magazines, page 3. Like, what is it to be perfect? Of course,
Yeah.
everyone kind of gets the understanding of that.
Yeah, and just tuning
Well,
in.
what helped you in this struggle and battle between caring what people think, essentially?
Well, yeah, is it caring what? I don't know if it really was, and fundamentally I think it was the control. It's a control piece as well. For me, one of the biggest things that I always remember was when we were traveling and living in Cambodia and had just the backpack that you're carrying with a specific, wardrobe, I guess, and you're totally stripped back, no makeup, no variety. And I remember having a grapple with that when we were living at the school. And there was a moment, because you're free in so many other ways, but there's a moment, and that's in the negotiation again of like old self versus new self, shedding those layers. And old self is like, don't you want to get back to, and again it's like that kind of ego voice of like, don't you want to get back to kind of city life,
Showering
and
twice a day,
like those comforts, and they're the comforts, right?
Yeah.
And we're showering with a saucepan in a massive pool outside, doing our washing at
the same time.
At the what? Yeah, at the same time.
You wash your clothes
washing
when
our
you
clothes.
wash yourself.
yeah. And of course,
Makes sense.
you're having these raw life experiences where you're shedding the perception of the day-to-day things that you're used to, and you're like, well, I feel so alive over here and liberated, but there's still this pullback. And so that was when I was really like, let it go.
Yeah.
Let it go. And so I really, let it go. And I, I had bleach blonde, white hair for so many years that I spent hundreds of pounds going to the hairdressers. And I don't judge anyone for dyeing their hair or expressing themselves through their hair. But if you're doing it to fill an internal void of a relationship with yourself, of how you don't feel enough or beautiful without it, that comes, building your relationship with yourself first, then everything else is an additional. But when we are doing things from the outside, adding things to ourselves because it's coming from an emptier space inside, or a void, or a relationship that isn't healthy and enriched from within, then it's never gonna be enough. It's never going to be enough. And fundamentally, I would go to the hairdressers and I'd cry every single time.
Because they haven't got it right.
Because they hadn't got it right. Exactly, that perfectionism. It's not right. It's not exactly the right
Because you're striving for something that's, firstly, back to what you said, is not going to fill a void.
Mm-hmm.
Because nothing can unless you develop that relationship and acceptance of yourself being good enough,
right, and
being enough.
Then the journey from those moments in Cambodia, which was like 8 years ago now, it was like, grow the blonde out, grow it out, get back to your natural self. It's, know who your natural self is. Experience yourself as your natural self, and then.
Can we talk about body hair?
Yeah.
Great.
Mm-hmm.
So enter the allowing of. You got more hair on your legs than me,
I do.
and I absolutely love that.
Well, that started as basically, again, our society's view of women and body hair, and our relationship with our own body hair.
It just blows my mind, and maybe that's because I've have a constant relationship with who we are on an animal level.
What do you mean?
Well, a lot of people don't think they're animals, and they would scoff at other women with body hair.
I've been scoffed at.
Exactly. Scoffing all.
But that's back to the whole caring what people think, right? So
yeah. So, but it's that, and the point I was trying to make is, it blows my mind because what is unnatural is almost, put on a platform. It's like, woo,
yeah,
lovely,
well, it's
celebrated.
Advertising.
Yeah, but it's like, what is so much more healthy is letting yourself be, letting your body do what it needs to do.
Yeah.
And growing your hair is a part of that.
Yes,
and
but I know.
And I'm not going to get into weird territory of like shaming anyone who's not growing their body hair, because of course it's
no, absolutely, and it does, and it can make, for me, when I wax, when I have my like wax ritual and all the hair comes off, I feel it's like, but it's because I turn it into more of a ritual now, whereas before it was
you
like,
could bring in cleanliness as that as well,
of course,
with that, and that's good.
Absolutely, and there's so many factors, and if you've been bullied, if you've been bullied before for something, that again is a deep wound.
Yeah, it's true. It's traumatic.
And it is, and that's back to the acne, because I was such a lovely, friendly, bubbly, likable young girl. There was a couple of incidents growing up where I was called names, but if you have been bullied, that is something that is fundamentally a core wound in the relationship with yourself. So a lot of people that have faced that sort of, and there's all sorts of different levels of trauma and personal experiences that can really lead to the challenging aspects of ourselves that we are experiencing. If you've had a parent say something to you, or a friend at school, or a teacher, so the body hair thing, because it is deemed by society as a certain, way for women, it's something that most women, and I did, on autopilot, didn't even think about it, didn't even question why. I was just shaving every single day. And that was an old, it feels such an old thing now to me, but it was only because, moving through this terrain of kind of getting back to more of the natural self-love, body love, loving the skin that I'm in, not thinking about these things anymore. I was at a sober rave, Morning Gloryville in London. Someone's dancing on the stage with their arms in the air, amazing full armpit hair, but a voice inside me, a woman, said, "Oh, that's gross."
Yeah.
But then immediately said, "Whoa, what is that voice? Who is that voice? Who am I judging here?" I checked in big time. And so I grew my armpit hair and started growing it from then on. From that moment, it was literally like the voice of judgment that we have within generally doesn't come from ourselves. But if we are judging, we will judge ourselves, and we will not be free to do any of the things that we want to do. The voice of judgment will always hold us back, because we will judge ourselves over over things. And that for me was a little, it was a little moment that needed to happen. And it was like, I'm going to overcome this by growing my own armpit hair. And it started with armpit hair. And then, it turned into just all over, letting all the body hair grow out.
And just like experimenting,
yes,
being sober,
mm-hmm.
it's on that trajectory, isn't it? It's experimenting with
sure
pushing the envelope, expressing yourself, and seeing what conversations come your way, and
right.
and who gets triggered by it, and then also who doesn't, and who comes to you and it's curious. Oh wow, like that's amazing. And like
right.
what conversations come from that, and what just observing the whole process.
Right. So this is the thing. So when you begin strengthening the muscle of self-awareness, let's call it that, and self and integrity and truth and natural essence and letting yourself be and loving yourself wholly, you become the observer, and you begin to observe more of life, and you're recognizing these elements, and you also become the scientist. And this is a practice. Okay, so we come back to the question around practice. What are your practices and tools? Becoming the scientist and creating experiments that you can tangibly play with and move around, the what are we calling them? The
dice.
Not the dice. The variables.
Uh-huh.
Moving around the variables so that you can check in with, the goal is to not have a judgmental voice within for any, for what women should, for around body hair, or, that's the goal. So what do I need to do to get there, and how can I experiment with that, and leaning into that, and then checking in with it. So like, I'm going to that event, and it was a hen do actually, with a load of people that I also didn't know, loads of girls that I didn't know, and it's like, okay, I'm gonna be in a sort of situation where I could be judged, or they could be saying stuff about me, and I want to not care. So I'm going to recognize that there's a part of me that feels uncomfortable, and it's actually the nervous system. And the nervous system is saying, whoa, this isn't safe. And it's saying you might be judged, and you want to be liked, and you want to be, accepted. And then there's another part that comes in and says, hey, this is an experiment, and it's okay to recognize how it feels in your body, and to lean into this experiment and see what comes of it, not what you think is going to come, not how you think it's going to pan out. And it opened the door for some of the most amazing conversations. The very question, why do we wax or shave? Who are we doing it for?
Militant about it,
or controlled, or who are we doing it for? And do you even know what your body looks like with loads of hair? Do you And it's it was quite funny, because one of my best mates, I was like, she knew I was doing this experiment, and she said to me, I was like, oh, I forgot that top that I was going to wear for my outfit on the first night. That was we were dressing up in a certain it was Spanish attire, and I'd forgotten the top that I was going to wear, which had like little clapped sleeves, and I thought it's probably going to be less straight in your face on the first night with all these amazing chicas. And she said to me, Nina, that's the whole point of the experiment. And she was like the little voice in my head, and I was like, okay, that is the whole point of the experiment. And then from then on, there's been so many other experiments, and that is when you become the kind of scientist, and you lean into these spaces of like, okay, I've got a relationship with my phone, or technology. I'm going to go, smartphone free for this period of time. I'm going to experiment with how that feels. I'm going to go social media free. I'm going to see how that feels. I'm going to go sober and see how that feels.
Stop eating meat for a while and see
stop
how that feels.
Eating.
See what people say. See what interactions I have.
Totally. And also in doing that, it's recognizing how you feel without those things.
Yeah.
And then making more conscious choices. And then you also start to eliminate the other of caring how the other sees you and becoming more confident in how you just are in the ever-changing beings that we are, the ever-growing, the ever-changing, the beginnings and endings, the life and death.
I think as a man, it's also on us to provide some sort of container where that can happen for our partners also, which is another insight.
It's interesting.
Because it is really. I mean, if you're, to use the word we said earlier, scoffing or immediately like going to the place of, like why would you do that to the person? Surely if you love this person, you're gonna want what they want for themselves.
I know, but men also have a. I mean, it was my dad, and I'm not gonna call out my amazing dad. Love my dad, love him. But it was very funny because
it is funny. I mean, what did he say?
He called me. I don't know if I should.
No,
say.
Don't say that.
He called me
it's
a gypsy.
Even worse that you didn't
called me
say
a gypsy.
Yeah, I was gonna say, if you don't say it, it'll be even worse.
He called me. And he sort of. It was funny because we were just in the dining room. We were just chattering away, and then I leant back and put my hands up like this or something, and he just went, "Oh my!" It was immediate shock, immediate what are you doing? Not from a place of, but it was from that place of women don't do that. What are you, a gypsy? And I was like, and I sort of laughed.
It was shock, wasn't it?
It was shock. And obviously because it was out of his perceived character of me, because of who I am, and so you are also testing the boundary, the kind of the edge, the membrane. You're testing the membrane of how the perception that you've given off for a lot of your life, and that you've created the mask that we live in. You've created the mask, the external, and you're testing that through your changing and being more authentic to yourself, and you're testing the way that people see you and the way in which that you're going to change, and the way in which you're being more authentic, but that's going to make other people maybe feel uncomfortable, or what are you doing that for, or you're not drinking any mornings, you're not drinking tonight, or whatever it is.
You've disrupted their world of what they are safe within.
Totally. And so what you're actually, and with Dad it was like, what? What are you, some kind of gypsy now? and I was like, see, this is exactly why I'm doing this experiment. See, Dad, do you not think it's feminine, or talk to me about it? And I think it really, it challenged his perception at the same time. And now, now he just he loves me for being the woman that I am, and pushing these boundaries. But to begin with, it was why do you always want to challenge and test and seeing that in a more negative light? And now it is fundamentally understood, because they see my nature they see my nature within that, because that's also comes from building a confidence in that and shining from that and finding joy in that. Whereas if you come from a place of I'm worried or fearful of how they're going to perceive me, then that energy is given off, and then they're kind of like, well, I'm worried about you, or I'm concerned. But what was the point that we were just talking about? Because I just wanted to touch on something that you just said.
Maybe it'll come to you. I want to mention like something similar, and it's not the same, but what I can relate to kind of like language that you're using is when I had an accepted part of myself as a child, which was my chest, because I've got it's called a concave chest, or I'm sure there's a name for it that I always forget. But I remember I'd have, you had swimming lessons at school, or you'd go on holiday, and I'd always remember being really self-conscious of my chest, deformity, whatever you want to call it, not normal. And exactly. And I'd always cross my arms at the swimming baths and try and I'd be in this position because Chris thinks a lot. No, he's just hiding his chest, and I'm like stroking my chin with my hand.
Yeah.
And it was like I just didn't like the way. It's not that I cared. When I'm on my own, I'm not running around like not accepting myself. But it was what I didn't like other people being awkward around it. Like if they were just, because it was the eyes, I'd catch people's eyes like giving it a second take, or them not having and this can kind of be perhaps advice for people who are curious about something. They don't know why it's there, but if you just ask and say, you know that I know that you know I know, let's talk about it.
It's called politeness.
Politeness, is that it?
Oh, I think it's in our culture to not speak.
Yeah.
Not to be polite and to feel like, I don't want to upset them.
Yeah. But for me, if they just went, what the hell is going on with your chest? I'd be like, yeah, it's pretty weird. I drink cereal out of it, and it comes in handy now and again. But yeah, it's bizarre. My ribs are caved inwards, and I can't play contact sports. It's never stopped me. But seriously, but yeah, there were.
And I think we were just talking about men and women, and image is a big factor of our psyche.
Psychology,
of our psyche. And I do think that when we again invite in the question to look in the mirror and to see your body and to be naked, nakedness.
Yeah.
It's something in our culture that is, it's got so many, there's so many elements to it. There's some shameful elements. There's some associated
associations with
nakedness. And of course, it is, natural to be naked. Some people don't feel comfortable being naked and or being in the skin that we're in, and that is and it's sometimes even just acknowledging that one thing, even if this is resonating with you and you're listening to this, and you're like, what is, what's the relationship that I have with my body, and my skin, the skin that I live in, and this body and my image, these sorts of questions. It's just a case of asking, and again, without judgment. And that's the piece around acceptance of what is, and even if the acceptance piece is around, okay, I don't like myself when I look in the mirror. How can I start to?
Yeah, one of the 7 C's,
right?
Which the listeners will hear about in the coming months. As it's a course you'll be putting out there. One of the 7 C's is curiosity.
Yes.
And for me, that word, it brings with it a lack of judgment.
Yes.
An openness.
Yes. A space.
Space.
Yeah. And so so you've touched on the 7 C's, and I guess for me the 7 C's have become the framework and the journey of self-inquiry that runs in circles. Courage being the first step. Courage is the step to look in the mirror and say the words to yourself and admit the uncomfortable truths that we might have. That's courage. Takes immense courage. to lean in.
Courage, curiosity, community.
Courage. There's an order.
There's
You're
an
so
order.
funny.
There's always an order. I love order, you know me.
I know you love order. So the first one is courage. And, you know, the courage to lean into that honesty, truth, whatever that is, to overcome fear. Curiosity is the approach with which we do that. So the why and the not why me. Connection. Connection is strengthening the knowing, the knowing of thyself, you know, and many different ways of doing that, but connection, and fundamentally with ourselves and each other. And the deeper we connect with ourselves, the deeper we connect with the other.
And the world.
And the world, yes. And the fourth one is creativity, which feeds into self-expression and our creative ways of thinking, and allowing that allows us to be creative as the scientist of our life, like we were just talking about, coming up with ways to tangibly grow.
You're loving the scientist, aren't you?
Yeah, I do love the scientist. Creativity, and not just around kind of self-expression and leaning. I believe unlocking our own innate creativity unlocks our relationship with confidence, and that's a silent C. Yeah, because it's so deep. Our inner confidence is so deep inside us, and so it's a silent C. Compassion is the fifth. Developing a relationship with forgiveness and letting go, and compassion.
Developing compassion as well, because it
Yeah.
is something we're not born with.
Absolutely. And that comes with self-compassion and compassion for people around us. And then the sixth is care. Of course, caring for ourselves, each other, the planet, caring about our environment, physically our environment that we live in, our bodies.
Which is all the same thing.
Health, yeah. Which is obviously, yeah, it is all the same thing. So care and self-care, of course. And community is the seventh C. And of course, connecting with people and like-minded people, and finding community is one of the fundamental pieces of living a well life. So yeah, that's number 7.
Amazing. And number 8 is Chris.
Number 8 is everyone should have a Chris in their life. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, great. Let's wrap it up. Leave you with that teaser of the 7 C's and what's to come. So how is that going to be put out into the world as a framework?
So the 7 C's is essentially the core principles that will be going into a course, a self-led course. So it's a journey with yourself. And that's the kind of fundamental level of self-inquiry, deepening self-awareness, you know, the relationship with ourselves. And of course, the 7 C's. I love metaphors, could talk in metaphors forever. And that's part of I Am Circle, which
we have not mentioned.
which we've not mentioned, but I've talked about circles all through this, because fundamentally I believe circles are circles and cycles, and it's you know, it's the I Am Circle was the mantra that guided me down the path when I didn't feel like other than you, and you know,
you didn't feel like a circle, you felt like a square.
Well, not necessarily even feeling like a square, but feeling the
triangle.
Triangle, yeah, got a tattoo of a triangle. But no, it was more so a mantra. I am circle, being like, I am not a label. I am not going to tick these boxes of society. I'm not I'm shaping my own way through this life, and I'm building that relationship with the unknown. And of course, building that relationship with the unknown and strengthening that ship, building it and strengthening it so that you can set sail into that unknown landscape, means you have to develop the practices and the tools to do so, to keep strengthening that ship and to make those sails like vast and wide so that you can venture out into the unknown. And ultimately, I Am Circles started out as a mantra, and I found that there were so many people resonating with that, being circles in a world that keeps teaching us to be square, and actually difference our uniqueness and being united in our uniqueness. Difference is the way, and that is what, our difference, our path, that is the way. And so I Am Circle kind of became the mantra that then turned into a kind of philosophy that turned into a community and of like-minded people, and
more of a movement now,
and a movement, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so
and it's a representation of the not needing to label or confine or put into a certain category, and everything that we've talked about, developing that relationship with not knowing and being at peace with that. There'll be so much we've talked about today, and people are like, God knows what they're on about. But like, be at peace with that, and it will come. The next thing that perhaps might spark something will come. But don't turn it off. Please don't turn it off because you don't or like aren't following. Because I listen to podcasts and there's so much I don't, whether it's I agree with or just I have no idea what wavelength they're talking about. But there'll be some parts of it which are so valuable, and it's just having that patience and acceptance of being okay with not knowing.
Totally. And of course, reach out if you want to know more.
Yeah, so where can people find you?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, the time on and off social media has been an ongoing thing, but you can connect with me on social media.
What's
at
your
Nina Bubamara.
How do you? Yeah, I'll put a link to that underneath.
And iamcircle.co.uk.
Amazing. And
My details
do
are on
reach
there.
out. Do say hello. And
and again, if there are people that have thought, what has this whole conversation been about?
My mum.
Your mum.
She'll listen. She'll be like, God, what are they talking about?
Oh, hi Pam, if you're listening. So yeah, and if it is, and we haven't planned any of this conversation. It has been totally unplanned and unknown where it was going to go. And I think we, recognizing that if some of it, recognizing in life that some things will resonate and some things won't. Take what does and leave what doesn't. And don't judge and attach and try and, make sense of everything. Or assign some belief or identity or idea about it. Just let it go, let it be, and take what resonates. And that is it. It
Amazing.
just is. That was a crap high five. What's on?
Well, I was going for.
No, we don't do that. We do that.
Taking it back to the old school.
What a bird.